Is God calling you to something more in your life? Do you feel like you're being challenged to go further, to do something, and yet you're afraid? Well, that's what we're going to talk about this week on the Fourth Magi. So in this week's readings, we've got Isaiah, who's being confronted by God to be his prophet. And Isaiah says, I am a man with unclean lips, amongst people with unclean lips. But God purifies his lips and says, well, then who am I going to send? And then Isaiah finally says at the end of the reading, send me. In the second reading, Paul is speaking to the people of Corinth, and he's talking about his vocational call and how he felt because he was a persecutor of the church, he was a sinner like Isaiah, that, you know what, he was unworthy to be an apostle, but God had other plans. As we know, Paul was one of the greatest founder of churches in the Mediterranean region. For a person who was a sinner, as he called himself, or somebody who was a persecutor of the church, and you would think, you know what, he shouldn't get this job. Why would you give him this job? He's a persecutor. God saw something else in him. And in the gospel, Peter is confronted with the miraculous by Jesus showing them a great catch of fish. He says to them, you know, put out into the deep waters, and they do it. And he gives them a tremendous catch of fish. But the miracle challenges Peter to say, whoa. And he kneels down in front of Jesus and says, I am a sinful man. Depart from me, Lord. Get away from me. I shouldn't be in your presence. And Peter is told, you know, don't worry. I'm going to make you fishers of men, is one translation. The catchers of people, you know, the netters of people. There's different translations. But he's going to be using his skills in catching fish into bringing people into the flock of Jesus, to making them disciples of Jesus. But the challenge for you and for me in these readings is that, you know, there are many times in our lives where God is calling us to something more. And you and I know what it is. It's a still small voice that we hear within us, a burning, a pull, a yearning. You know, you really couldn't describe it to somebody if you had to put it into words, but you know you're being called to something more. And so often, what happens? We're afraid. We're afraid, we feel unworthy. We think of a million excuses to not do what God is calling us to do. And we let fear get in the way. And we see in our readings Isaiah, Paul, and Peter exhibiting fear in what Jesus and what God is calling them to do. And so this week, let's take the time to really think about what is it in our lives. And it doesn't matter what our age is. We could be 15, we could be 50, we could be 80. It doesn't matter. It's not about retirement. It doesn't matter we're in the prime of our years. God is always calling us to do his work. And he's calling us to do something. And what are we afraid of? That's the question. Because Jesus says it to Peter, and he says it to you and to me. Do not be afraid, because I have something better in store for you. So what is it? Let's find it. And then let's ask for God to give us the courage to do it. God bless you and have a great week.